All right, we're live. I'm 8 minutes late on this one, but we're here. Wait for a couple people to show up here. Need some background music or something. There we go. There's somebody. All right. So we are, there's two people now. We're good. We have a show. Got some fun stuff planned for tonight. We're not in the shop. We are in the new leather working room. So let me know if you can hear me okay in the live chat. Live chat. Hey, Chris. So there's been a couple of comments on the channel about my Gadsden flag. So in a deep and profound effort to not offend anybody, I just went with the American flag here. So got that. Anyway, yeah, so we got some fun stuff planned for tonight. I'm going to talk about cable Damascus. Good sound-wise, thank you. Is that Lucky Dog? That's probably how I'd spell it wrong too. Safety third. So, cable Damascus, knife sharpening. Talk about that a little bit. I've got this new workbench here that you can't see, but I've got the camera on here, so hopefully it doesn't storm of wrenches. There we go. Hello. Hopefully it doesn't shake around too much when I start sharpening stuff. Anyway, so yeah, fun stuff. Before we get into the main topics of the live stream tonight, I wanted to show you guys this if you haven't seen it already. Ta-da! Pretty proud of this. This has been literally several years in the making because I'm a slow learner and, learning to make a saleable hatchet. Hey, Mitch. So I'm pretty excited. This is the first of what I plan to be many to come, but it's exciting. So there it is. It's a hatchet. It's actually up for sale right now on the website, firecreekforge.com. And I think what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to make them in batches and do like drops, So instead of taking orders that I'll just get behind on, I think that'll be the way to go. But currently, I'm not going to be offering specific models per se. I'm going to get that dialed in, I guess. But in the meantime, it'll be similar products, but this particular one here, it's got a 1 pound 7 ounce head on it, so a little bit bigger than your axe of this size typically. 14 3/4 inch length, so you can get some decent work done even though it's a hatchet. So enjoying that. That's been fun, especially since we're making headway on it. So set that down here. Oh, and also I'm getting a 1 inch size logo to go on the hatchets and hammers, so that's exciting. So, subjects for tonight's live stream that I thought up were cable Damascus and knife sharpening. So, what I simply wanted to do with the cable Damascus is kind of do a rundown of what I've learned. I wouldn't call myself an expert on cable Damascus. I have learned from other people and done a few projects myself, so I'll just share that with you guys and we'll talk about it. So this is the recent dagger that we did here on the channel, the last video actually, and it's a cable Damascus. Now, let's talk about the steel that cable Damascus is. And as you know, when you're working with reclaimed steel of any kind, your biggest issue is usually understanding how to heat treat it properly, how to work with it properly to get good results. And, cable Damascus is no different. So I actually had a guy reach out to me who watches the channel here who works in the wire rope industry. And that was really awesome because I'd heard a few things here and there about cable and what kind of steel it was. But he really clarified it for me. And from what I understand, is the cable wire rope. Is there a buzzing in the background? Hey, Wolf Party, is there a buzzing in the background? Because this light here is I can hear it. Hopefully you guys can't hear it, but let me know if you can hear it, and if so, then we'll have to do something different. But anyway, wire rope is typically Mitch, you can hear the buzzing. Is your headphones or is it the light? Okay, somebody else can't hear it. Okay, well, 50-50 then. We'll go with that, I guess. It's not bad. Okay. Yeah, so wire rope, it's made out of what's known as plow steel. And there's plow steel, you only hear your own tinnitus. Yeah, me too. I've got both going on. There's plow steel, improved plow steel, extra improved plow steel, and then extra improved plow steel, as far as I understand it. And the extra improved, if you look at the composition of what this fella from the wire rope industry sent me, it's basically 1095 high carbon steel with a tiny bit of chromium. Not enough to make it a deep hardening steel by any means, but it probably helps it that direction a touch. But so it's essentially 1095. And you think about, why would they use a high carbon steel for howdy from Australia, Andrew? Why would they use a high carbon steel for a application that needs a high tensile strength? Well, I believe because they need the abrasion resistance to maintain the integrity of the wire rope over the life of the cable. And of course, the carbon is what helps with that. So you have a high carbon steel in your, and here's the part that I don't know. I don't really know the difference, how you're going to tell, which cable, which steel your cable is made out of. That part I don't really know. If you can get it from somebody who knows, like from the manufacturer or something, that'd be awesome. That's rather uncommon, I think. So, you have cables that are used for different applications and things like that, but really the best thing that you can do, your best bet, is to just work with the piece that you have and test a heat treat on it. Start out like you're working with 1080 steel, essentially. Start with a low temper and then work your way up from there. That's what I would recommend. Unless you know exactly which plow steel it is, that's kind of your best bet. So that's kind of the rundown of what I'm aware of, or what I've learned with the steel on cable. So the next thing is, we talk about the pattern we get of it. I don't know about you, but I think that, I don't know if you can see it in this particular shot here, but the pattern is pretty distinctive that you can get out of cable, and it's pretty cool. I really do like it. Now, does this make the best blade? No, it doesn't. And the main reason is because of the low carbon steel that's distributed through the blade. It's kind of a catch-22, as with it's a trade-off. Okay, everything in knife making is a trade-off anyway. But a couple of you guys have asked, or people made some comments about, not about you guys, but there's been some comments on some of the videos about unraveling the cable. And I've done it both ways, and the reason that I unravel the cable during the welding process, or before the welding process, you'll heat it up, you'll unravel the cable, put your flux in there, stuff like that. There's a couple reasons. One is to make sure you get all the crud out. I have done it without unraveling the cable and received pretty much the same results as far as welding the steel goes. But what you don't get on cable Damascus, if you don't unravel it, is typically you don't get as good a pattern, or as bold a pattern, because what you're dealing with on the cable Damascus is not a difference in, the alloying components of the steel. Like regular pattern welded steel is, hey Richard, did you miss anything good? I don't know. Just started talking about cable Damascus, so. The thing that creates the pattern in cable Damascus is the difference in carbon content primarily. Yeah, it does kind of, Troy says it looks like a dragonfly wing on the dagger. It does kind of look like it. And I think it's pretty cool. But the light colored pattern that you see in there, that's the low carbon steel. So when you unravel your cable and expose all those strands to the heat, yeah, I showed off the hatchet. Here's the hatchet right there. Expose all your strands to the heat of the forge. That allows the decarburization process on the surface of those strands, which, typically decarburization is not our friend. But in this case, it allows that pattern to be much more bold. And so you have a difference in your carbon content. The higher carbon steel, as it remains, etches darker in the etchant. So that's how you get your pattern. And so unraveling the cable is going to typically provide you with a bolder pattern. And so that's one big reason to do it. Now, of course, obviously that's going to put some low carbon steel or lower carbon steel into the blade and along your edge. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast. If that's a problem, you have to do something like a sand mire or something like that to get an extremely high edge integrity. That's just not really why you would make cable Damascus. So, like I say, it's a trade-off. Everything in knife making is a trade-off. So there's that. What else was I going to talk about on cable? Yeah, I haven't done a whole ton of cable, but people have made different suggestions and stuff. And like in the last video I did, it was funny because people were talking about how I took it out of the forge and knocked it on the floor to kind of open it up and knock all the crud out. And that was actually a suggestion somebody had made on the channel a while back here. So I thought I'd try it. It worked pretty good, except for the piece I was working with was a little long. And so it kind of bent instead of just kind of opening up as much, but it still worked pretty good. So another thing that that fella from the wire rope industry told me about cable is that typically, I don't know if this is in all cases, but in many cases at least, the manufacturer will actually put asphalt and grease in the core inside the actual cable. So asphalt, as in the same stuff they put on the roads, is what he told me. And that's to hold that grease in there. And so I think the first cable that I worked with, I thought, or maybe the first two, I thought that it was super dirty, and I was kind of amazed at how much crud was in there. And then when that fella told me that, I was like, oh, that makes sense, because it was full of junk. And so really, trying to clean your cables, that's another point I wanted to talk about. So trying to clean your cable before forge welding. I've tried to do it that way. I've done it that way, and then on this project here, I did absolutely nothing to it. I just welded up the ends and threw it in the forge. And this was some real nice rusty cable. Had been sitting outside for years, or in use, for however long. And I did nothing to it whatsoever. And I got as good of results with it as my other two cable projects, where I tried to clean the cable. And so anyway, so when this fellow told me that they actually put asphalt inside the cable, you can put your cable in acetone and whatever and stuff like that. Unless you really soak that thing for probably days, that's going to be really hard to get that stuff out. So it makes a lot of sense to me to just throw it in the forge and let it burn all that stuff out, and then just kind of knock it all loose and use plenty of flux. Probably not as much as I used, but anyway, that's really where you're going to get a decent weld. So those are some interesting tips or points I wanted to share with you from the guy that knows cable, because I was amazed the first couple times I did cable. It was so full of crud. I was like, how did it even get in there? But turns out they actually put it in there. Not all the dirt, of course, but the actual asphalt and everything in there. So yeah, so that's kind of my new favorite way to do cable. Just throw it in the forge and let all the rust, everything else, just burn off and get rid of it. So anyway, so that's kind of the rundown on the thoughts that I had about cable Damascus. I don't think there was anything else. I might be forgetting something. Hopefully not. yeah, I think that's it. Anybody else have any comments, questions about cable before we switch subjects? Richard says, I use crane cable. Grease is the only bad part about it. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty greasy. But that's why my new favorite way is to just let the forge take care of all that. Chris says, did I see any of Alex Steele's crazy long live stream? I saw about 2 minutes of it. He was starting to make his $160 bottle opener, which incidentally, I guess some guy from Texas was buying. That's all I saw of that. Any other questions or comments on the cable? And yeah, no, this is another thing, a kick I get out of it is the people that helpfully remind us that it's not Damascus. Yes, we know that. We know that. It's not actual Damascus. Keep the cables greased. Incidentally enough, though, cable Damascus is closer to historic, quote-unquote, Damascus or pattern welded steel. Different cultures have their various versions. Thanks, Daniel. I think it's cool, too. But it's closer because the pattern is derived from variances in carbon content, unlike the nickel content of the steel. Richard, have you tried unraveling your cable and put it in the forge after it's unraveled for a short amount of time? Storm of Wrenches, yeah, I've done that. A sand my or laminate with cable for the outside, and then a solid steel, mono steel for the edge. Pull up my messages here. Frank, what exactly is borax? I don't know what the actual chemical name for is. I don't know what the actual chemical name for it is, but it's just 20-multene borax that you get from the grocery store that people use for laundry, is all it is. And you can buy anhydrous borax and stuff, which is just borax that has the moisture cooked out of it and whatever, and you can get other flux things that have borax and other stuff in it, but I just use the straight borax from the grocery store. $500 for a bottle opener. Yes. Okay, well, I guess it depends on who's making it now, doesn't it? Troy, would there be a max size of cable you would use and why? It depends on what I'm trying to make. It also depends on the particular cable, because some of the cable lays tighter than others. And another thing the fellow from the wire rope industry told me is that sometimes they'll actually hydraulically, sorry, I'm tired tonight, I can't speak more gooder. Hydraulically compress the cable so it lays tighter. And so some cable is pretty kind of gnarly once you get into the larger diameters, but you can also take those apart and use the individual strands too. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily matter. Richard, yeah, you should try. Yeah, go ahead and try that. And I almost guarantee that you'll get a lot better pattern if you do that. Unravel it and cook it for a few minutes. Okay, so that's our Benjamin. Can powdered steel be added when unraveled up to the up the carbon content enough to make a difference? Same time you're adding. The powdered steel isn't going to stick around, it'll just fall off. And Wolf Party, you're leaving so soon. That was short-lived. powdered steel isn't going to stick around. It's just going to fall off really because it has to be contained until you get to a welding heat. So, hey, Robert just got here. Okay, that's kind of what I want to talk about with the cable Damascus. So the next, oh, just done talking about. I thought you were leaving. I thought you were like out of here. This is boring. I'm gonna go watch Alex Steele make a bottle opener. That's fine. It's free country mostly. Okay, so if you guys have any other questions about cable Damascus, I'll try to answer them or make something up that sounds really good. But in the meantime, let's talk about sharpening knives. Thanks, Richard. Sharpening knives. Alrighty then. So I'll just make a disclaimer and say that I don't really have professional knife sharpening equipment, but I think that's kind of a good thing because most people probably don't anyway. Thanks, Fresh Start. I don't know why these comments don't stay up on the screen. I'm not technologically advanced enough to understand how to change that or even if that's possible. So I appreciate that. So I don't have a professional knife sharpening setup yet. I would like to kind of upgrade, but that's not a big deal because in the meantime, most of us don't have a professional setup. I wouldn't expect anyway. So I've just got a Norton double-sided stone here, which I dropped a while back, but it's, what is it, like an 8-inch? I have a tape measure. 8 inches. So this has a coarse and a fine side. I don't use the coarse side. I think I've used it maybe 3 times. I use this side all the time. I can't tell you what grit it is because I don't know. But it's an India combination oil stone. There's a number of different brands and makes out there. It doesn't really matter. But I do like the medium to fine grit there. And then I have an Arkansas stone, and you can get these, I think this is probably a medium. They come in different hardnesses, and the hardness softness level is what determines sort of how fine a hone it is. And you can get these up into like the super hard, they're black, which I want to get, but they're like a very fine hone. This is somewhere in the middle, but it's still a lot finer than this, okay? So these are what I use on every single knife that I put out the door. Then finally, I've got a piece of leather here, and it has, I need to put some more on, but it has some, it's called Mother's aluminum polish. It's aluminum polish. And the reason I use that is because it's like a cream. It's extremely, extremely fine. It's made for polishing aluminum, which is soft. And so it's, and there's lots of other types of polish compounds that I'm sure you could use, but for a matter of reference, like your white rouge that you use on your buffing wheel, for example, is much too coarse for this. So we're talking about a very fine polish compound, and it's been a long time since I actually put any on there. I need to put some more on there, but you can see all the black, that's steel that's been polished off and left on here. A lot of guys will attach their strop. This is what it's called, is a strop. I don't know if I mentioned that. They'll attach their strop to a piece of wood. I just haven't gotten around to doing that. I lay this flat on my workbench, and anyway, you'll see how I use it. So I'll just kind of walk you through the process here. So when I make a knife, I put the initial, well, let's back up. We got to back up here a minute, okay? Don't want to get too technical here, but we got to get a little bit technical. So you see this knife I have right here. This is a full flat grind blade. And what that means is that the spine it's about 1/8 of an inch thick, and right at the edge of the spine it starts getting thinner all the way down to the edge. It gets down to 15 thousandths ish on this particular blade, And then there's another angle, and that's called the primary bevel, and that's what actually makes the edge, okay? So most of your knives out there are going to either have a flat grind, a hollow grind, or a convex grind on this portion of the blade, the main portion of the blade, and then they're going to have a primary bevel, and that is what you are sharpening, okay? And of course, this differs from a Scandinavian grind where you have one angle, which obviously starts much further down the blade, and it goes to a 0-degree angle, and that's your edge. Those work really great for carving wood. Not necessarily as durable of an edge because there's less material right behind the edge, but that's another story. We're going to be dealing with the most common type of knife, which is it's got the primary bevel and secondary bevel. So I will put the primary bevel on with a fine grit belt on the belt grinder at a slow speed, okay? So what we have then is our angle's established, but a pretty heavy burr, and it's really not very sharp at that point. So after that, I will come over to my stone here, and these stones need to be used with either oil or water. It doesn't really matter which, but once you use oil on them, the water just kind of, if you try to use water after that, it just beads off, and it doesn't really work. So if you want to use water on them, don't use oil on them. What I use all the time is good old W40, because that's what I have, and it seems to work just fine. So what I want to do at this point, after putting that initial bevel on, is to take off that small burr that you'll be able to feel with your finger if you feel with your finger, not this direction, but away from the edge. You'll be able to feel that, okay? So this is where you have to pay attention to what kind of angle that you're holding your knife at, okay? So the kind of angle that you want on your edge is going to be determined by the particular knife and what it's used for. This particular knife here and has about a 20 degree bevel on it. Now I don't get super technical here on this part as far as like measuring the angle. I've just done this a few times and I kind of do it by feel, but we're going for about a 20-degree angle right here. And what I'm talking about is where your primary bevel contacts the stone, okay? So that's going to be determined by how much you lift up the spine of the knife from the surface of the stone, if that makes sense. So I'm going to maintain this angle, and I'll just hold on to the knife on the handle, and I like to steady the blade with my fingers here on the back, and I'm just going to draw the knife into the edge across the stone, maintaining that angle. I like about a 20-degree angle on most outdoors knives, and then when you get into like a finer kitchen knife or something like that, you know, you're looking at more like a 15-degree angle, something that's a little thinner. But like I say, it depends on what the knife's for. And then you get into like a chopping knife, you're going to go with more like a 25-degree angle because you want to have that support right behind the edge. So at this point, I'm just trying to remove that burr and kind of establish that primary bevel in there. Now, this is how I did it for the longest time, and there's nothing wrong with this whatsoever. It's effective, but what I eventually started learning how to do, which is faster, is to be able to remove more material at a faster pace by using this method. So I'm taking off more material a lot quicker, and when you're putting the initial bevel or initial edge on a knife, that's kind of useful. So this took me a little bit of practice to kind of learn this, to maintain that angle. So if you're just starting out with it, or if you're not comfortable with that yet, don't worry about that, but that's something to kind of work towards, I guess. But even so, once I get down to where I've got the bevel mostly established and that burr is almost all gone, I'll come back and get in some nice even strokes on here. Make sure that that edge is clean as I can make it. Okay, so there's going to come a point where you can't get a finer edge off of this stone. Once you've removed the burr from the initial bevel creation, and you have gone as far as you can on the stone, you're going to get to a point where you can't get a finer edge because the stone is only so fine, if that makes sense. And I can get it nice and sharp with this stone right here. This is almost shaving sharp. I could slice paper with it and stuff, but this could be considered a working edge right here. But you're also going to feel, and some guys like to use this method of feeling the edge here, and you can feel that there's some very tiny sort of roughness or serrations to the edge, and that's as far as you can go with this particular stone. All right, so that means I'm going to go ahead and move over to the Arkansas stone, and there's different versions of this. I have used Richard says, can you feel the difference when it's done on that stone? Yeah, I don't really know how to tell you when to know if it's done. That's really going to kind of come with experience. You'll just get to a point where you've gone as far as you can. I don't really know how to tell you when to know exactly, because it's all going to depend on how much material you have to take off of the edge on your particular blade. So going to have to blame that one on experience, I guess. So, but there will come a point where you're going to get it as sharp as you can get it, period. Because the grit on that stone is only so fine. So, where was I? I can't remember where it was now. See, I told you I'm getting older or something. Anyway, you can feel the micro serrations on the edge here. And we want to remove those. We want to have, in most cases, well, let me back up. If I'm using a knife for woodworking and this kind of stuff, and the edge that is going to last the longest is going to be one that has the cleanest, smoothest edge at the microscopic level. So any micro serrations or any kind of roughness that you can feel or can't feel on this edge represents points of weakness, because they are little bristles of metal, essentially, that while they might be effective sharpness-wise for a short period of time, they're going to break down quicker. So the closer you can get to a mono edge at the microscopic level, the stronger and longer lasting your edge is going to be. And that is why we continue on with the Arkansas stone. And I'm just going to repeat the same process. I'm going to keep that same angle. And, you know, how many times across the stone does it take? I don't know, probably at least half a dozen on each side. So a total of 12, I guess you would say. And this is going to bring that edge down to a finer grit, if you will. It's going to remove those micro burrs, those micro teeth even, that the previous stone left, okay? And I can feel the difference on that. It feels sharp, it feels a little bit sharper, but it doesn't feel as rough if I go up and down. So, again, this is something that you have to kind of experience for yourself. Don't rub your fingers up and down on the edge aggressively, because that's how you cut yourself. But just very carefully, you can feel what's going on there. Okay, so I'm getting to the point where this is what you would call a shaving sharp blade, and I can, well, it will shave hair, and I can continue on this stone a little bit more. I could get a little bit more out of the stone, but again, you're going to get to a point where it's not going to get it any sharper because this stone is only so fine. Ideally, I would actually have like a one of those super hard Arkansas stones, which I want to get. It's on my wish list, but I don't have one of those, so I'm going to go ahead and switch. Oh, and by the way, as far as holding the stones down, I have this clipped to the edge of the table. This is some of that matting stuff that you put in your silverware drawer or whatever. And if you don't have a permanent mount for your stones, this works pretty well to kind of set it on there and keep it from slipping around. That's going to be probably, that's probably one of the biggest tips I can give you is, however you do it, make sure that there's some way to secure your stone, because if it's sliding around on there, it's just gonna be a major pain in the neck, and you're gonna not get results that you wish you did. So that's a really, however you do it, you can put some nails on each end, whatever, but securing your sharpening stones. Okay, so I've done my Arkansas stone. It's to a point where it'll shave hair, but it's not as sharp as it could be. And again, we want to try to get this down to the cleanest edge we possibly can at the microscopic level, because that's what's going to last the longest for us. So I've got my strop, and I kind of covered that already, but if you weren't here yet, just a piece of leather. I think this is like a 7 or 8 ounce piece of leather, and it's got some, the brand is Mother's. It's aluminum polish worked into the surface. This is the hair side. This is the flesh side down. So I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to hold it at about the same angle that I had it on the stones, or maybe slightly raise the spine slightly. And I'm going to pull it away from the edge, which is the opposite of the stones, of course. You cannot strop towards the edge. All right? And again, we're going to pull through the curvature of the blade so that we contact the entire edge. And we're just going to hit it, I don't know, several times on each side. And you're going to feel that resistance as it drags across the leather with that polish compound. And that's what lets you know that it's polishing up that edge. So yeah, I'm holding it at a higher angle in this case, because essentially what you're doing is that leather is giving a little bit, pressing down a little bit. It's got a little bit of give to it. So it's kind of curling around that edge and removing that microscopic burr, okay? So that's what's going to give you that. On the microscopic level, it's essentially like a domed edge, and that's going to be strong, the strongest that I know how to make anyway. Okay, so we've hit it a few times on the strop, and again, you're going to be able to feel the difference. It doesn't feel like, I don't feel tiny little teeth catching anymore. It feels sharper still than it did the last 2 steps, but smooth as far as lengthwise. So again, this is something that you have to kind of experience for yourself. But so anyway, we're at a very easily shaving sharp edge now. It effortlessly shaves hair. So that is the process that I currently use, and that's how I get to that point. I know some guys do not like to use a strop in the case of like kitchen knives, stuff like that, where you do leave some of those sort of microscopic teeth. That can tend to kind of bite into vegetables and stuff a little nicer. And so I can see where you would want that benefit. But like I say, when it comes to woodworking and things like that, I always like to strop my edges so that you've got that chisel-like, good edge on there. So that's how I do it. Any questions, comments, throw them up there. Okay. Let's see, let me tip my thingy-majigger up here again. Sorry. All right. Okay. Let's see. Somebody said, I missed it. Somebody asked what kind of Mr. Oz, what kind of pressure while doing that on the stone. That's a good question. Let me Let me answer that. I don't really know. So we're going to pull our scale up here, and let's do the Arkansas stone. Zero that out. Oh, that weighs exactly 1 pound. Imagine that. Okay, so hopefully this, is that going to slip around? Yeah, it's going to slip around. Let me see if I can, maybe a rag will work. This is all for science, okay? Oh, zero that out again. Okay, let's see if we can. Got up to 7 there. Got up to 8 there. This isn't exact, obviously. 5. I would say 6 or 7 pounds approximately, maybe up to 8. And it also kind of depends on, I guess, if I tried this one, the first stone, I would probably be putting more pressure on there. So I guess I would say 6 to 8 pounds would probably be approximately the weight that you're putting on there. Come on now. And, it can be less as you sort of get the edge closer to where you want it on a fine stone. Okay, let's see here. Dylan Wolf, how long till you make another buoy? It's going to be after I finished the last one I started. Okay. Stormer wrench is like that blade shape. Thanks. Yeah, I like it too. This is the ball bearing knife from several months ago, I guess. Thanks, Wolf Party. Did your hammer get there yet? I was going to ask you if your hammer got there yet. It's probably still in the mail. Stormer, I just cut all my veggies on the bandsaw. I can never go back now. Yeah, well, there you go. Oh, Wolf Party, can you do a hatchet? Yeah, same. So, sharpening a hatchet. This is already pretty sharp, but I can go ahead and, I could use a little bit, I guess, on the metal blueberries. I think you were late last time. Yeah, your hammer's still in the mail, Wolf Party. All right. So yeah, hatchet is the same way, except for, again, your angle is going to be a little bit different. But it's still essentially the same process. You can do that, or you can use this method. I find that to get a really nice edge on it, I still have to come back and do it like I did the first time here. So if you want to kind of do the initial grit with that, I still like to come back and do this though. It is a little less. It's a little more difficult to do with a hatchet, but you can definitely get there. And I do like to sharpen my hatchets with the stones. I don't use a file on them unless you're to the point where it where it needs a file. Unless you're using it an awful lot, it shouldn't need a file for most of the time. see what we can do here. So it could be a little better, but we can get hair off with it, so. There we go. Sharp hatchet. All right. And yeah, as far as the polish compound, I'm sure there's others that are good. I just have not used anything but the Mother's aluminum polish simply because that's what I had on hand. And so actually my wife had it on hand for a different project and I just borrowed some. So I'm sure there's others that you could use. I just haven't used anything else. Nick asks, maybe you went over this before I joined, but is there a particular angle that is best for chopping versus slicing or boning? Yeah, I covered that a little bit earlier. So like on this knife, general use outdoors blade, about a 20-degree angle for the primary bevel. You get into like a kitchen knife for chopping vegetables and stuff, going more for like a 15-degree. And then once you get into a chopping knife, you're looking at, 25-ish. And I don't have an exact science on that. I don't measure the angle and stuff. It's sort of just I don't know. Like I say, I've done it a few times, so I kind of know what I'm going for. And but you can get your sharpening your sharpening kits that give you an exact angle and stuff, and that's fine. But I kind of like to do it this way. Excuse me. So that's how I do it. Actually, this both of these stones I got from my granddad. This one years and years ago used to have a little wooden case, and it's a good one. And then this one a little more recently, but still a few years ago. And that's what I use. So Storm of Wrenches, have you done any sharpening with a wheel, like a wet or dry grinding setup? No, I put the initial bevel on with the grinder, but I don't do the actual sharpening. Thanks, Richard. Appreciate it. It says great demo. Dylan Wolf, I have to go next time. I want to not be late. All right, I'll see you next time. Nick, thanks. What's best to hold up against bone? The best thing to hold up against bone is to not try to cut bone with a knife. The answer to that question is multifaceted, because it's not just the angle of your edge, it's also the steel and how it's heat treated, and all these kinds of things. If I sell a knife to a professional hunting guide, which I have done, and he uses it on several animals, or if I sell a knife to some guy, who is not as experienced or something like that, and they're gonna get different results from the same knife, is what I'm trying to say. So that professional hunting guide who is, field dressed hundreds of animals, he doesn't do things that the other guy, and I'm not saying that you are, I'm just using this as an example, isn't going to do. And so they're going to get different results. But yeah, a boning knife, obviously you're going to be hitting some bone with it, probably just because of the nature of what the knife is for. But you just have to find a happy medium between a good edge that cuts well and something that holds up, as best as it can. But I would say something probably like a 20-degree angle is what that would give you, is the best of both worlds. So that's kind of my answer to that. But Nick says, a noob hunter. I don't think that's who is asking about the bone. I don't think that's Nick. Sounds like he's asking more like a butcher shop type situation. I don't know, but so I don't know that. Sorry, I'm confused about who's asking what now. I guess that was the same. Okay. Yeah, you're welcome, Nick. Hopefully that kind of answered your question without confusing. Wolf Party, who tries to cut bone? He wasn't. I don't know if he was asking about cutting bone. He was just asking about what's going to hold up. But anyway, Metal Blueberries. What's your usual reference place for new styles? You're talking about blade styles, or what? I'm not sure what you're talking about. And on that note, with the knife thing, yeah, you hear stories about how it's kind of funny. You hear stories about the super mystery steel that came from a old sawmill, back in 1933 or whatever, something, and you're able to field dress 20 elk with it and never touch the blade to a sharpener and this kind of stuff. You hear those stories, sometimes it's old timers that'll come up and whatever. And it's kind of funny because like I just said, one guy using a knife, he's going to get, if he's doing it right, he's going to get some really good results out of it if it's a good knife. But somebody else can take the same knife and just destroy it. So it's kind of funny where these stories come from. I think one story I heard was there's some, back in the old days, some guy had a heat treating process where you could take the Bowie knife and chop a wrought iron wagon wheel in half with it right off the wheel, a wrought iron wagon tire right off the wheel, and then you could shave with it right after that. All these stories. It's like, oh, that one didn't get told in the tavern a couple times before it made its way out into the great unknown. Metal Blues, yes, blade styles you have not tried. I don't know. It's a good question. I think it's, I don't know. I think there's a project I want to try, or maybe I'll just get an idea. Old Wives' Tales, yeah, that's correct. I'll get an idea, and I think a lot of times I'll think of an idea that somebody else has already thought of before, but I don't know that, and so it seems like a brand new idea to me anyway. And I'll just kind of go with it, and then sometimes later I'll say, oh, somebody's already done that, but that's fine. So I don't know. Sometimes I'll see like a historical knife. Actually, I got a book I'll show you guys here. So this, I can't say that I've actually made anything that I found in here yet, or duplicated or replicated or anything, but this is an example of where I would get some inspiration for different styles or new styles. This is kind of a neat book. It's just basically a bunch of pictures with descriptions, and it's an old book. This is probably a reprint. I don't know, but I don't know where they got all these original pictures from of these knives, but it's kind of interesting. Like this one here, this particular knife right here is what you can look at that and call that an Arkansas toothpick, but it dates from 1770 to 1790 on the Ohio, back when the Ohio River area was the frontier, right? But doesn't that look like an Arkansas toothpick? Fair amount. And that's why when people start going off about what's a Bowie knife and what's not and all this kind of stuff, sometimes I'm like, there's not a determined, now I'm getting off onto a rabbit trail. there's not, that's not how it works. Like, it's so varied and so widespread, and like, so here's an example. This one dates from 1790 to 1815, which predates the Bowie knife, quote unquote. But that's a Bowie knife if I ever seen one. So, you know, and the original Bowie knives were just basically just big butcher knives, but I mean, that's a Bowie knife from what we would even call one today. And that's pretty similar to what, you know, Jim and Reason Bowie and their cohorts carried. And so when somebody pops off and tries to tell me that this or that's not a Bowie knife, it's like it's just funny. So most of these designs were in use even before they were popularized. So it's just interesting. I enjoy the history of it. And then you go even further back, and I mean, you can see European influences that a Bowie knife. A lot of these Bowie knives don't look too much dissimilar to like a Viking sax or something like that. So anyway, to not get off on too long of a rabbit trail, this is an example of where I would look at some of this, study some of this stuff, and get some ideas. Yeah, if you study Bowie knives in particular on that subject, you'll see that there's a broad range of styles and designs that were considered Bowie knives contemporary to the Bowie brothers and those guys. So there's just not really a specific style that has to be considered that. But then you get into here's another example of 1750 to 1775. Again, that's what we would call an Arkansas toothpick, but it way predates the time period that the Arkansas toothpick and the Bowie knife were well known and popularized. So just another example. It's just a dagger is all it is, you know. Here's some other examples. So, and they're from no later than 1825 on those ones. So anyway, there's an example. There's some examples of what I kind of look at. One thing that I did actually want to make a project of, or replication of, maybe kind of my own style, but is a Hudson Bay Dagger. These guys right here, and they're actually put out by the Hudson Bay Company as trade items primarily. But you'll see a lot of Native Americans. Well, some of them what you would call a Hudson Bay knife was not made by the Hudson Bay Company, but actual, like, there's a bunch of different tribes that started carrying and making them on their own, or having them made. But that's where they originated. It's a pretty interesting design. So anyway, on that note, I don't have any pictures of it here, but on that note, back in Idaho, there was a fellow that was a Lewis and Clark historian, and he commissioned a project where I built a couple of different tomahawk heads for him, and one was a pretty standard tomahawk looking design, and one was like I think they call it a spontoon. Is that correct? Am I saying that right? It's basically the end of a spear that they would carry around in the earlier colonial military period. But it had like the spear point and the little curly fleur-de-lis or whatever. I don't know how to say that. I'm not saying that right. But anyway, it was purely decorative. But Lewis and Clark traded with the natives that they originally contacted the first winter there. And they would carry around these very decorative and sort of exaggerated tomahawks in their belts, and they would only have a handle like this long because they weren't actually for use. They were just decorative, and they were made from just mild steel or whatever, iron, wrought iron. and they had kind of a whole pattern of holes in them and stuff, and they were just a status symbol. But anyway, got to make those for him. It was kind of cool, but not sure where I was going with that. It was a historic project, I guess. So anyway, yeah. So that's an example where I get some ideas from. How's that for a rabbit trail? Storm of Wrenches. Sheffield took the ball and ran with it on buoys. Yeah, English companies made most of the Bowie knives that anybody carried in that period. There was American makers scattered, but here and there, but it was mostly sort of your local blacksmith and stuff, and they weren't really standardized designs, and that's another thing that sort of lent to the broad variety of designs on the actual knife, so actual Bowie knife. Wolf Party says, hey, next live stream, could you try to how to do grinding the bevels on the 2x72? Possibly. See if I can set up for that. I'm not sure. The Harry Wisman in Nacogdoches. Yeah, it's not too far from here. I don't know exactly where Nacogdoches is, but it's not that far. RC Cole instead of McCook, okay. Outback says, how about making a lockback folding knife? Regards from down under. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because that's something I've been thinking about for quite some time, and it's just a project that I need to tackle. And yes, Spontoon. Yeah, did I say that? Yeah, Spontoon, that's the correct. Yeah, lockback folding knife. I've been thinking about that for quite a while. I want to get in. I want to do that. I guess I felt slightly intimidated by the design and everything. Yeah. So the last thing that I was going to do here on tonight's live stream is share a channel with you. And actually, some of you, probably a lot of you guys already know of it. I don't know or not, but Brent Bailey is I guess he still is. He's a professional blacksmith, and he's probably pretty well known in the blacksmithing community. I just found his channel on YouTube recently, and I hadn't heard of him before that. But Brent Bailey, that's the name of his channel on YouTube, and he is a professional blacksmith. As far as I know, he still is. He hasn't, I don't think he's uploaded to the channel for a while, but anyway, he's got quite a few videos on the channel there, on his channel, several that I've found quite useful. He makes a lot of hatchets, axes, hammers, tooling, things like that. So he's a blacksmith, and he's got some good content on there. If you want to learn how to do some of this stuff, that was a good resource that I recently found. So Brent Bailey, and he's on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, I found it to be helpful, some of his videos. So that's what I wanted to share with you. Yeah, lockbacks. On that subject, one of the first knives, I think it was the first knife that I bought as a kid, and I split, I don't know how much firewood it was, probably, at least a cord, probably a couple cord of pine, bull pine or whatever, not the best firewood, and full of knots. But they paid me $45 to split all that wood. Most of it I had to split with a wedge and a sledgehammer because I didn't have I don't know if I could have got a splitting them all through it or not. But anyway, one winter did that. Took my $45 and went and bought a buck 110 Hunter. And one of the greatest, I'm not sure where that knife went, but one of the greatest things about that knife is the way it smelled. It just smelled smelled really good. I don't know if it was some kind of oil or preservative or something they put on there. Troy, you just bought my hatchet. That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I'll make sure this is, well, it's already shaving sharp, but I'll make sure that it's extra shaving sharp. And Troy, I'm pretty sure you're the one that bought the knife that you're taking to South Africa, which is pretty cool. So I'm excited to, if you can get some pictures of whatever it is, whatever kind of big game you're cutting up over there, that'd be awesome. Anyway, I have one other knife that I know of for sure over in Africa, unless it's destroyed now, I don't know, but I left one over in Zimbabwe, so, but it's a little one, so, anyway, back to my knife story. So I bought this Buck 110, and if you guys have owned Bucks, you know, they're good knives, but they're, well, so what happened is, you know, you get it out and you start cutting stuff. And what I was into at the time, and well, still am when time permitting, which isn't much, but was what I called primitive wilderness living skills, which is what everybody calls bushcraft now, I guess, or I guess that's something similar. Survival skills, but I really enjoyed doing that stuff. So one time I was making a bow and drill fire starter, you know, so you have to get your fire plate or your piece of wood and start a little hole with your knife tip, you know, to get the end of the drill started in there. And you've got your handhold up here in your bow, and it's spinning that drill back and forth. So you got to get that little hole started. So I took my Buck out and put it down in there, started twisting, snap. And that's when that was one of my first lessons in blade design and purpose. And those Buck 110s are not designed for that. They're designed for field dressing or skinning. So they got that nice fine hollow grind, that nice fine tip. And you don't go starting bow and drill fire starting sets with the tip of your Buck 110 Hunter, but I did. And so it's, you know, that much shorter. And like I say, I don't know what happened to that knife, but that was a little sad because I snapped the tip off of my knife. But now I can't even remember where I was going with that story. Oh man, what was I telling that story? Hey, bubonic roach. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate being able to pay the bills. Storm of wrench. What's the difference between a hatchet and a belt axe? I don't know. I think if you, like somebody just said, if you put this on your belt, it becomes a belt axe. I don't really know, to be honest. But anyway, oh, lockbacks. That's why I was telling that story. Yes, so lockbacks can be very versatile. The greatest thing about them, I guess, is that they lock open so you don't cut your finger off. But yeah, I do want to do a lockback. I've been thinking about the kind of blade design I want to do and stuff. But it's going to be something a little more robust than the Buck 110 because I like to be able to use my knives for a variety of things instead of just light duty, really. Which is always kind of, when you talk about knife design, it's always kind of interesting, that heavy brass, you know, handle with the wood and stuff, and it seems like a disproportionately light blade on that. But that's just me. Anyway. Hey, Steven. All right. I too have switched to RC from Coca-Cola. I just went with one of my favorite beans here tonight, which I'll probably regret when I try to go to sleep. But This is a co-op grown, shade grown. It's grown in Mexico. It's roasted in Texas. The only problem is that it comes from Gestapo, Costco, where you they chase you down if you don't put on the thing on your face. So I don't know how that's gonna go. Metal blueberries. I have a lock back, but the blade is 1/4 of an inch that you can jump on. Yeah, there's, you kind of have to go between, does it cut stuff or does it pry stuff? Oh, I guess I forgot to mention that we're done with the subjects. Now you can all ask questions, but you guys are anyway, so that's all right. You guys know what's up. Scott, Mexico and Hawaii have great coffee. Yeah, there was another one that was not at Costco that I found, and I'm sure there's a lot, but I found another one. It was a Sumatran blend, I think, but I don't know where it was from. But Wolf Party says, when and why did you get into bladesmithing, and what were some of your first projects? Yeah, so I'll tell the story again real quick here. So, the reason I got into bladesmithing, knife making, that kind of stuff is saw something fall down there. I don't know what that was. It's kind of weird. Unless I'm just seeing things. Anyway, the reason I got into knife making is because I was really into the survival skills, bushcraft, that kind of thing, and using knives, and sometimes breaking knives, as I just mentioned. And one day I was at the library and I ran across this book called Step-by-Step Knife Making by David Boye, which I actually have a copy of. Now, this was not the edition that I found at the library. The edition I found was a hardback, it was like that blue kind of hardback cover. Anyway, so I found this book, and up until that point, I really didn't realize that it was even possible to make your own knives, like the idea had never occurred to me. And so I started looking into this book. I was like, I really enjoyed using knives and, spending time out in the woods and doing all that kind of stuff. It's like, wow, like you can actually make your own knife. So as soon as I saw that, I checked it out, went home, and started building my first knife because that was the thing to do. And I didn't have any blade steel. The only steel that I could find was literally a piece of scrap steel that was attached to a yard sprinkler for a base, So I pulled that off of there, started hacksawing it up and using a file and everything like that. And it was mild steel. It wouldn't even harden, but I finished that knife and never actually used it because it wasn't even blade steel. But that's where it all started. And quickly got some steel that actually worked for blades, like old saw blade steel and stuff like that, and went from there. So first couple of years were pretty rough, and then as far as the results, I try to heat treat in the wood stove, which was very very difficult with some severely mixed results. A couple turned out all right. I actually sent one knife to I don't know if you guys know who Christopher Nairges is. He's out of LA, down in California, but he's a survival or wilderness instructor for a long time. If you're familiar with the American Survival Guide magazine, he's been a contributor, or was a contributor for a long time there. I sent a knife to him, and he liked it. It turned out well enough to be serviceable, so that was cool. I always thought that was pretty cool. But anyway, that's how I got started, and then I did it as a hobby for a long time, off and on. And then about 5 years ago, I started making knives again and started selling them, and then ended up quitting my job and doing that for a job. So it's pretty it's been fun. Let's see. Outback says, I use my homemade lock bag for skinning and cutting up kangaroos. I've done for 20 years or more. Well, that's cool. Yeah, you guys have kangaroos down there like some of us have white-tailed deer. Not where I'm at now, but where I used to be. And then, of course, if you go to East Texas, I think they've got white-tailed deer like that everywhere. Kind of similar, I guess. Richard, do you have an Etsy store or somewhere else to buy merchandise? I have an Etsy store, but I don't really sell anything on there anymore. Everything's on the website, my website, firecreekforge.com. So that's the best place to go. I do have a few things up on the Etsy stores, but I don't really like selling anything on there anyway because I don't care for that company. At some point, I'll just take everything off of there. But anyway. Nicholas says, what got you into first making Wolf Party a hammer? His incessant nagging, I think, is what got me into that. I actually said in the first one, so you guys don't know this, but I finished a hammer, and I think I calculated my hammer weight or the stock weight off of 2-inch stock, and I actually had like 1 7/8 stock or something like that. So I did not make I didn't make the hammer the right weight, but he graciously decided he wanted that one anyway, plus the proper weight one, so I got to make another one. Hey, Luke, what's up, man? Luke Reilly in the house. Doesn't have anything better to do than sit and watch the live stream. You missed most of it. No, so Luke's my buddy from Idaho. Council, Idaho, and that's where I grew up. He's also a blacksmith and leather maker. Yeah, cool, man. Breakaway Book says, have you ever tried to smelt down your own ingot of high carbon steel in a crucible? No, I haven't done that yet. There's so many different things to do with steel, blade steel, and everything like that. I'm sure I'll probably never get to all of them in my lifetime, but making some, what is that called? There's a technical term for it, but Woots, I think. Woots steel. Anyway, haven't done that yet, no. Storm of Wrenches, have you done any casting? I have done a little bit of aluminum casting years ago. Not any steel. The aluminum green sand casting, that was a fun project, and you can make some cool stuff with it. That's all I've done. It's been a long time. Robert, hey, from Pretoria, South Africa, big fan. Hey, thanks, Robert. I don't can't remember if I made it to Pretoria or not. Flew into Johannesburg, Joburg, when we went to Zimbabwe a couple years ago, but I don't remember if we drove through Pretoria or not. I don't remember. Luke, what are you forging? What are you forging these days? Oh, Luke, check out my hatchet. It's not mine anymore, actually. Troy on here just bought it, but thought you might like to see that. Speaking of which, Luke, did you ever get your carving hatchet from Hoffman? What's his name? Anyway. Oh, you got an Induction Forge? I think somebody was asking about Induction Forges on the last live stream. And I don't know I haven't used one. I know a little bit about them, but time saver. Interesting. Yeah, for some things I imagine it would be perfect. Who's the guy out of Montana? He's an artist blacksmith. He makes some presses, forging presses. I can't remember his name now. Anyway, he uses Induction Forges a lot. That's not very helpful because I don't even know. I can't remember his name, so. Oh, you still don't? Okay. Liam Hoffman. Yeah, I know he's backed up. I don't know how far. Long years, I'm sure. That's okay. I'm going to provide some competition here, so. Robert says, okay, so yeah, we probably did go through or past Pretoria then. So, as another rabbit trail, for those of you who don't know, and this has nothing to do with the live stream, but these guys from South Africa are chiming in, so it's pretty fun. Yeah, so in January 2018, I believe it was, I got to go over to an orphanage in Zimbabwe, a little village out in the bush called Unga, and set up a real basic little blacksmith shop there, and taught about half dozen kids some basic bladesmithing, and they did really good, and they kept working on it after we left, but that was pretty cool. And it'd be fun to do something like that again, but so anyway, we flew into Johannesburg and then drove up to Zimbabwe, so that's my Africa experience. Breakaway says, I bet you could use argon inside an induction forge. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Luke from British Columbia here. Look forward to smelting my own iron ore that I gold panned. Yeah, this should be fun. Yeah, that's an interesting process. It'd be fun. Yeah, Gilmore. Storm of Wrenches, that's right, Gilmore. The guy that makes presses, he's a blacksmith out of Montana, somewhere, western Montana. Luke's making cannons and bits. Cannons. My Texas razor blades, yeah. Steven's in Ireland watching at 4:24. Well, my good fellow, that's because hopefully you're not losing sleep, you know. Nicholas, are you in Africa, Nicholas? If you are, I didn't know that. It's 10:30 in Arkansas. It's like 10:30 here. Breakaway books to limit scaling. And I don't know of atmospherically enclosed induction forges. I'm sure there probably is something like that, but the ones that the small time blacksmiths are using are not that kind that I'm aware of. See, Luke knows more about it than I do. Tyler, are you going to be at the Blade Show in Cleveland? I don't know. I don't know anything about that. Don't know when that is. Oh, Loveland. Oh, Loveland. Didn't know it's coming up. I don't have plans to, but that's good to know about it. I just don't have anything to, like, as far as selling stuff, I wouldn't be able to do that because I don't have anything. I have a few things. I don't know. I've just been focusing on so many other things. I haven't been building up stock to do any shows, but Signal Guy, Tulsa, howdy. Steven, just up feeding the baby back to sleep in 30 minutes. Alrighty then. Well, guys, as usual, this I went over a schedule that I wanted to. I told my wife I was going to keep it down to like 45 minutes, and I don't think I did. Anyway, this has been fun, though. Appreciate you guys being here. I should probably wrap it up, though, because I need to probably go to bed. What time? I don't even know what time it is. Get lost in bladesmithing land, and you just see you later, Luke. You forget what's going on. Anyway, Nate Dog. Yeah, you did miss it. Sorry, man. Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for buying the hatchet, Troy. Appreciate that. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for all your support. Yeah, I guess that's all I want to say. Just again, I'll just say it again. I appreciate you guys supporting the channel here. I'm really excited about the direction it's going. I was actually going to do a video on Monday, and I was going to talk about a couple of things. But then I realized that the video was basically just going to be watching me have a Monday. So I scrapped it. I'm hoping to get a video out for this Friday, and that will be forging a hatchet. I should be able to do that. I don't know if it'll be including hanging the hatchet, putting the handle on, because I don't think I have any more handle wood. But anyway, that's all right. So as always, guys, I appreciate the support. So we're up, we're almost up to 19,000 subscribers, and I just, the more subscriber base we have, sort of the more potential there is in what we can do. So that's awesome. Yeah, we've had some cool projects so far, and we've just barely started. Like I was thinking earlier this week, I was like, we haven't even made a sword yet on the channel here. We haven't even delved into sword making yet. So yeah, I'm excited. I really appreciate it. Let's see, here we got some other questions here I can't resist answering. Steven, what timber do you use for handles? This one is ash. I've got some hickory coming, ash is good. Hickory's good. Most people are familiar with hickory, so that's what I've got coming. But Nicholas, yeah, no, I like I said, I was going to do a video, and I was going to talk about some of the stuff, like why I haven't finished things like the 1,000 bearing knife yet, because there was some weeping and gnashing of teeth on a couple of comment sections on some of the projects that I haven't finished yet, namely the 1,000 ball bearing knife and the snakeskin buoy. And so in the video that I didn't make, I was going to explain. See, I said I was going to get off of here, and now here I am. Anyway, in the video that I didn't make, I was going to explain that I understand everybody's chagrin and discomfort over the fact that I haven't finished a couple projects. But the explanation there is that, hold on a sec, Scott, is black walnut any good? I haven't heard of it being used for a handle, although that is what the wedge is here. The thing about hickory and ash is that the strength that they have and the flexibility. And while we're on the topic, see, this is the problem. There's so many rabbit trails, I just can't resist. If you see that grain, maybe able to see it better on this. It's almost straight up and down with the bit, slightly angled, but the very best is exactly straight up and down like the wedge is going. This is still perfectly acceptable. But what you do not want is the grain running this way, because you're not going to get the work out of your tool that you should, and the shock resistance and absorption that you should. So you got to have the grain running the right way. And when you do, it allows the handle to flex, especially on a long, a full-size axe. Allows the handle to flex side to side, which is good, but very little this direction. So that's also very important. This is terrible. I said I was going to get off of here, and Nate Dog says, any hammers for sale? Where was that at? He asked if I was going to have any hammers for sale. The answer is yes. The problem I've been having is trying to find steel because nobody sells square stock in anything for 1045 or 4140. So I have to go with round, which isn't a huge problem. I did find a supplier that does have rectangular stock for the hatchets and axes and stuff. But man, I don't know. I guess I don't live close enough to a steel mill. Anyway, but I have to get some steel coming, more steel. Okay, Wolf, see ya. He's, yeah, I know this is terrible. Okay, I can't answer all these questions. Sorry, guys. What was I going to say? I was going to explain. So on the channel here, what I've done a lot of is since I started, is learning how to make content that works to build the channel. And that has to be stuff that you guys want to watch and stuff that I want to make. And if you don't have both of those aspects to it, then it doesn't really work. And so that has been a learning process. And so I'll get an idea that I think might work for content based on what has kind of worked in the past. And you kind of have to jump on that a lot of times. Because as you guys know, as craftsmen, you know, inspiration strikes, and if you don't jump on it, then a lot of times it'll just kind of dissipate. So that's part of the reason why I've kind of jumped around and done different things. But don't worry, we will. And it wasn't any of you guys, so it doesn't really matter. But we will finish the project. We will finish those things. So anyway, that's the part of the explanation that I was going to give you guys and everybody else on the video that I didn't make this week. So, all right. Oh, Acacia Hardwoods in Lubbock is a good supplier. Good to know. Good to know, because I had to order some in from Bell Forest Products. And all right, guys. Lots more questions and stuff, and everybody, appreciate you being here. So, but I got to get off here now. So we all got to go to bed. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I will see you on the next video, next live stream, all that kind of stuff. It's been fun. Can't thank you enough for your support, and I will see you next time. Now I have to figure out how to turn this off. All right.